coming up in all angles. NEPA says it's taking action on Rio Cobre pollution.
Windalco can have its day in court and they can prepare a defense, but the defense can't beat the science. We have the information.
And the Police Federation says INDECOM does not understand the force.
All the recommendations except one are properly catered for in JCF policy, subsidiary legislation, and of course our own parent legislation, the Constabulary Force Act, right? There was no in-depth analysis of what is going on.
And joining me in this segment of the program, we have the CEO of the National Environment and Planning Agency, Peter Knight, who is here with enough papers and a big file. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so we're talking about Windalco and what NEPA has or has not been able to do in relation to Windalco and the Rio Cobre and effluent into the Rio Cobre. Let's start with the most recent incident, because NEPA said it did serve an enforcement notice after that spill into the Rio Cobre following heavy rains. What has happened since serving the notice?
Well, dear, before I tell you what has happened since serving the notice, I think I'd like to put a little bit of context to this. Long before this spill occurred, we did the risk assessment and we realized that we had to put some risk management in place. And we also communicated the risks within the agency, and we have had dialogue, exchange of correspondences and discussions with Windalco. We also had a legislative context that allowed us now, because we amended the permits and license regulation in 2015, to bring entities such as Windalco into the permit and license scheme. Prior to that, the NRC grandfathered these high-risk establishments. And so we had that work to do also. So we recognize the risks that Windalco and the operation pose, and we serve Windalco an enforcement notice.
Which one of them? Because there have been many over the years. Which
yes,
one?
I'm talking about the 2018 enforcement notice. And we mandated Windalco to do take some specific actions. One was to dredge the ponds to obtain additional capacity. Another was to expand the effluent holding facilities. In other words, Windalco was required or is required to construct additional holding facilities.
Was any of that done?
Yes, Windalco, after discussions and exchange of correspondences, at one point it appeared that the Windalco was appealing our instructions. So we met with them without prejudice to explain what is it that we were mandated them to do.
So did they do everything that you mandated them to do?
They dredged the ponds, and Richard Nelson, the manager, senior manager, environmental management and conservation, tells me that we have obtained an additional 33 point something capacity in the holding facilities.
33.3 what?
Percent in additional holding capacity. My understanding, my briefing is that Windalco has land issues, and that the additional lands that they required to construct the needed additional holding ponds, that is a matter they would have to have discussion with the Commissioner of Lands, the NLA, to obtain those lands.
No, stick up it, I'm not following you. So did they do the expansion and put in enough capacity, the capacity that NEPA had said was needed?
No, they have not added the additional ponds to date.
They dredged
but
the
they
ponds.
have dredged to obtain additional capacity.
But they didn't put in additional holding facilities.
No new facilities have been added, and which is one of the point of our enforcement notice.
Which means that what happened mid-October was just waiting to happen. That was going to happen at some point anyway.
Which is why I mentioned the risk assessment, Dion, because we have been you know, we have been struggling with managing these high-risk facilities. And we know Windalco, not only Windalco, a number of them, power generating facilities, bauxite mining facilities, you name them, present tremendous difficulties for regulating. And we are now at the point where we have gotten most of these facilities with permit and licenses. And that gives us more control.
Yeah,
over the
but let's
operating
not lose
system.
sight of the essence here, which is the people of St. Catherine. I mean, our producer Kalisha went to the vicinity, saw some babies with skin that was just covered with eruptions that the mothers said happened subsequent to the spill. So the people are suffering because you haven't been able to make Windalco do what they need to do. It surely can't be enough for them to say, oh, we need land. I mean, this is a huge entity that makes a whole heap of money. Solve the problem.
And then let me quickly say, there is no way we could want people to suffer. So let me make that point.
But they
We
are.
did not cause Windalco. Windalco had no permission to discharge into the Ryacoba.
On that occasion.
We have not granted any approval for the last 6-7 years. Earlier, we developed a protocol for discharge, but the entire hydrology and physical features of those areas have changed. There's no water in the rivers to allow for any discharge or anything like that. Windalco, there is an early warning system for the bauxite and aluminium industry. And it includes, let me quickly tell you, it has the JBI, the Water Commission, the Irrigation Commission, NEPA, the Ministry of Health Environmental Health Unit, as well as the Water Resources Authority. So once we begin to see these challenges, the early warning system, which is managed by JBI, which Windalco can tap into, information is fed through that system, right? We saw where the levels were getting out of hand. I personally wrote on that system to say we are not allowing any discharge into the waterways. So what happened over
Is
the
that
period, the
it just
12 to the
happened
16,
anyway?
yes, and that is why, Dion, let me quickly tell you, we are
But
preparing.
you understand why people look at
Yes.
NEPA and say, oh, no, no, use.
But I'm trying to tell the people that the people could not say that.
But
And
you've identified
no.
a problem.
And we have done
1
something
year
about
ago,
it.
you saw, let's forget that it's been going back. Somebody from
Yes.
St. Catherine said for decades. So let's
Yes.
forget that it's been going back so long.
Yes.
2011, 3 enforcement notices served.
Yes.
Let's even go back to last year. The problem was clear.
Yes.
Never recognized the problem. You
Yes.
told them to do something. Them not do it. You saw
They have
rain
not done
coming.
everything.
Well,
Yes.
we saw effluent in the
Yeah.
river. You saw rain coming, you saw the river rising. So it was obvious this was going to happen. You said,
Act of nature.
no, it's a
Yeah.
predictable act of nature, rain
Yes.
going to fall in rainy
Yes.
season.
Right.
You said no permission to release.
Yes.
Where we ended up.
But
Effluent in the
they are the
recovery. So that
remedy.
is why people saying, no, use me
No,
tonight.
no, I'm not accepting that argument. But
Okay.
you know, the remedy is to use the legislative underpinnings that we have. We are now preparing documentation, and I suspect that we are going to do that by this Friday. Don't forget, Dion, and Jamaicans tend to forget. In 2012, we took Windalco to court. We took Windalco screaming to court, and you know it was resolved. Let me just say through mediation, and it cost Windalco heavy sums of money.
And yet here we are, 7 years
Huh?
later.
But Dion, it
With
is
babies
it
with their
is
skin erupting.
it is no. But you see, most these multinational companies don't want to be charged with environmental crimes, you know. And you know, let me go back to the baby thing, because that's a Ministry of Health forte, and I don't want to get into that. And that is why the Ministry of Health, through its environmental health unit, is part of the process. We are not going to take responsibility for the health rules. It's like we other persons complain about health issues. If you have health issues, go to the Ministry of Health and the local health department. But I can tell you, Dion, that
No, man, I'm not asking you to deal with the health issues. But if the environmental issues were in place, those health issues won't arise.
yeah.
One
But this
falls on
time,
the
you see,
other.
Dion, we are going to do as we did in 2012. we are going to we're going to do the valuation of all the resources, that the impact that this pollution incident has had on the river. We're going to value the resources. We're going to add the value for the remediation. We're going to include in there the health impact, the direct loss of the resources, etc. And all of this is going to be and will be a part of documents we are lodging in court against Windalco. Windalco can have its day, as they did in 2012. They can contest our documentation, our case on the last time. We had to go to the DPP to have the further discussion. Windalco can have its day in court and they can prepare a defense, but the defense can't beat the science. We have the information.
All right, hold that thought for me, because there are a number of things you said I want to follow up on. We're at the break though. Let's go to the break. We'll come back with Peter Knight of NEPA in just a moment. Remember, our hashtag is TVJ All Angles. We're back in a moment.